Hello everyone, welcome to the Self-Knowledge course lectures. Today we'll be having lecture number 4 of Phase B, and in this one we will talk about mental projection. This is a practice that will allow us to ascend from the astral plane to the mental plane. We'll also see how valuable this practice can be in our process of self-knowledge. To better understand this topic, let us begin by recalling that we have a sevenfold constitution. We are actually multidimensional beings, and it is through our 7 bodies that we are able to move within the different dimensions of nature. At present, 5 of these bodies exist in a lunar state due to our fallen and degenerative condition. We possess the physical body and the vital body, which belongs to the third and the fourth dimensions. Although these are fully developed, they are still subject, to illness, to pain, to aging, to death, as a consequence of our egoic condition. The physical body allows us to exist in the third dimension, while the vital body provides it with life and energy. It is the vital body that belongs to the fourth dimension. The astral, mental, and causal bodies are not yet fully developed. What we currently have of these bodies is only a principle or an embryo. The astral body principle allows us to feel, as the astral plane is the realm of emotions. And the mental body principle allows us to think, while the causal body principle, also known as the body of the will, gives us the capacity to exercise will, especially in choosing not to act according to the desires of the ego or to deny ourselves. And through these body principles, and by applying the verification practices taught in this course, we can consciously unfold into these dimensions and move within their lunar aspects, carrying out meaningful investigations. These experiences allows us not only to verify the teachings through direct experience, but also to understand how inner world is composed, to know the inner world more deeply, and also to obtain valuable insights that support our inner work. However, you will notice that the projections carried out with these lunar bodies are not entirely objective. Even when they can be clear and conscious, they still contain elements of instability and often carry a dreamlike quality. And because or due to our egoic condition, these parts of our inner world are actually full of ego, of psychological defects. And well, this is why it is so important to develop these bodies, transforming them from a lunar state into a solar state and fully creating them through the conscious and wise use of our sexual energy through the practice of suprasex. When the solar astral body is created, we gain the ability to move consciously and at will in the solar aspect of the lower fifth dimension, which is the astral world, visiting, for example, temples of wisdom and many other places that exist there. And with the solar mental body, we are able to move objectively and consciously within the solar aspect of the mental world, which corresponds to the upper fifth dimension. And with the solar causal body, we can move within the solar aspect of the lower sixth dimension, which is the causal world. But it is important to remember that the Buddhic and Atmic bodies, which corresponds to the upper sixth and seventh dimensions, already exist in a fully developed solar state. However, we are currently disconnected from these higher aspects. But as we elevate and transform our lower nature, as we solarize our emotion, our mind, and our will, we gradually reconnect with these superior bodies. And we must understand that each of these bodies corresponds to a specific plane, and that we move within each plane through its corresponding body. And with this understanding in place, let us now explore what mental projection is and the simple technique that we can use to project ourselves into the mental plane. In previous lectures of this course, we have already learned how to achieve conscious astral projection. This is the practice through which we separate an inner double or astral body, allowing us to move consciously and at will within the astral world, the lower fifth dimension. Mental projection goes one step further. It consists of, once we are conscious in the astral plane, being able to separate another inner vehicle, the mental body, and with it move freely within the upper aspect of the fifth dimension, known as the mental plane. Let us remember that the dimensions are levels of consciousness. This means that all dimensions exist here and now. As we begin to move through more subtle bodies, we encounter fewer limitations, fewer laws, and therefore greater freedom. This allows us to carry out deeper and more refined investigations. And well, in essence, projecting ourselves into the mental plane involves a double process. First, projecting into the astral plane, and from there, projecting or unfolding further into the mental plane. Many people have experienced this process unconsciously through what is commonly known as a false awakening or a dream within a dream. This occurs when a person is dreaming, then feels as if they wake up, begins to act within that state, and may even speak about the dream they just had, only to awaken once again, this time in the physical world. And what actually takes place is that the person has unconsciously entered the mental plane, moving with the mental body, and when they wake up the first time, they are still outside the physical body, but now functioning in the astral plane with the astral body. And upon the second awakening, they return to the physical body. However, the goal is to learn how to carry out this process consciously. This is important because the mental plane possesses very unique and valuable characteristics that we can explore through direct experience. For example, since this world is governed by only 12 laws, we experience a much greater freedom of movement. Here in the physical world, if we take a jump, we immediately fall back to the ground due to gravity, because this is one of the 48 laws that governs the physical plane, the force that magnetically pulls us toward the center of the earth. In the higher dimensions, this law doesn't exist, and as a result, we are able to float and move freely. And likewise, the laws that regulate time and space do not function in the same way there. In the physical world, moving from one place to another requires time, depending on the distance and on our speed. But in the higher dimensions, movement occurs differently. There we can travel at the speed of thought. By simply focusing on a place and imagining ourselves there, we can instantly be present in that location. Not only that, but we can also move through time with the same ease. So, in contrast to the physical world, which is governed by 48 laws, the mental plane, governed by only 12 laws, offers an extraordinary freedom of movement. Another important characteristic is that this is the world of atoms. I mean the mental plane. The physical plane is a cellular plane, since our physical body is composed of cells. The astral plane is a molecular plane, as the astral body is composed of molecules. This is why the astral body can pass through walls or extend beyond the physical limits. The mental plane, however, is more subtle because it is atomic in nature. An interesting point to observe is that molecules are composed of many atoms. And because of this, there is a key difference between astral and mental projections. In the astral plane, our psychological defects or eyes are perceived as a single unit. In that emotional world, each desire, each emotion or defect, appears as a distinct entity, which may take the form of a person, an animal, or even a symbolic figure. For example, impatience may appear as a person embodying impatience. Jealousy may appear as a jealous individual, or a particular instinctive defect may appear in symbolic form, such as an animal. However, in the mental plane, these defects no longer appear as a single unit. Just as a molecule is made up of many atoms and each negative emotion is composed of many thoughts, in the mental plane, that same defect is perceived as a multitude. For instance, impatience. You call impatience and they may appear as many different figures, each representing a specific thought or detail that forms part of that defect. This aspect is fundamental for our inner work on self knowledge and psychological depth. As we studied in lecture 27 of Phase A, real progress in psychological transformation occurs when we learn to observe and eliminate the small details that make up our negative patterns. Another very useful characteristic of the mental plane is related to the defect of pride, which has its primary expression at this level. In daily life, pride often leads us to speak constantly about ourselves. We feel the need to share everything that happens to us, both good and bad. And at times, this leads us into indiscretion, revealing things that would be wiser to keep private. And in the mental plane, these eyes behave in a very, very similar way. For example, if we are studying a specific defect, such as the fornicating self, because we already understand the need to stop wasting our sexual energy and we decided to work on this. Then, in the mental plane, when we call this defect, many figures will appear, each one with different characteristics, and each of them, moved by pride, will be eager to express everything they represent. We may observe different aspects such as pornography, lasciviousness, masturbation, oral sex, anxiety, coquetry, seduction, sadism, masochism, sentimentality, and many other details. In essence, a multitude of figures will appear, each one representing a specific component of that defect of the fornicating self. For this reason, it is advisable that when carrying out this type of investigations, we focus on smaller details instead of calling the entire defect of fornication, which can be vast and complex. It is more effective to call a specific aspect, for example, the eye related to nocturnal emission or the masturbator eye. In this way, a smaller group of figures will appear, and the information we obtain by observing and listening to them will be much more precise and useful for our reflective meditations on that defect. This technique becomes especially valuable when we feel stuck in our psychological work, as it allows us to uncover deeper details and continue advancing until the defect is completely eliminated. Another important application of mental projection is that it allows us to verify the progress we are making in our inner work. If you are working on the elimination of a particular defect, when you call it during the practice, you may observe that some of its aspects appear weakened, injured, or even no longer present. I mean, dead. In this way, you can directly confirm the progress that you are making in the psychological work on that defect. However, it is important to remember that we don't go to the mental plane to fight against our defects, but to understand them, to study them. There, we can observe how they fit on us, how we sustain them, and how they operate in detail. There is no need to fear. And upon returning, it is essential to record and reflect on the experience in order to properly understand it, and also to interpret that experience. And we for that use the same guide that we use to interpret our astral experiences. The practice for projecting ourselves into the mental plane is actually very simple. It begins by first achieving astral projection using any of the techniques we have already studied in this course. And once you are consciously present in the astral plane, you give a firm and clear command, like with a military voice: Astral body, get out of me. At the same time, you make a small forward jump as if you were removing a coat from your body, like shaking something, which is shaking the astral vehicle from you, okay? And in that way, you will remain in the mental body. Once you are established there in the mental body, you will be conscious within the mental plane. At first, everything may appear similar, but you will notice a greater freedom of movement. And if you call one of your psychological defects, you may be surprised to see how many figures appear, since internally we are a legion. We are composed of many parts. Both the astral body and the mental body belong to the fifth dimension. They are simply two different vehicles operating within the same dimensional level, which is why this transition can be carried out with relative ease there. When both bodies are separated, they can even interact with each other as two individuals would in the physical world, each with its own consciousness. This allows us to perceive the differences between those bodies directly. And well, to conclude, let us remember the importance of creating the solar mental body. Just as it is necessary to develop the solar astral body in order to access the higher aspects of the astral world, the same applies to the mental body. Within the lunar mental world, perception is not entirely reliable, as there can be illusions and deceptions due to our psychological defects. In contrast, in the solar mental world, everything is clear and corresponds to reality. This is why it is essential to make proper use of the energies and the essences that we recover through psychological world, and to apply them through the practice of suprasex toward the regeneration and formation of these solar bodies. And this concludes today's topic. I hope it has been as clear as possible. Remember that if you have any questions, we are here to support you and to clarify any doubts you may have. If you are not yet part of our WhatsApp group, you can find the link in the description of this video or audio. So you can join our WhatsApp group, receive complimentary material on all these self-knowledge lectures, and get in contact with the administrators of the group to solve any concern or any doubt. I would like to invite you to the next lecture of Phase B, where we will explore alchemy, fascinating topic entitled The Balance of the Centers and the Fabrication of the Mercuries. This is a subject of a great importance for entering the initiatory path that leads to the intimate self-realization of the being. Please don't miss it.